Hey, what's up, folks? How's it going? This is Rohit here, and welcome to DevOps Challenge Hub. So let's start with today's interview question. Today, also, we are going to discuss a couple of questions on EKS. And the first question is, what is CNI? Container Network Interface in EKS. What is Container Network Interface in EKS? And what are the advantages? Like, why do we need Container Network Interface? So, Container Network Interface, it's like a networking rules that tell container how to talk to each other. Because the container, they need to talk to each other. Like packet may be coming from outside, from internet, how it reaches the container, how one container talks to another container, right? A web container talks to a backend database container, right? So how they talk to each other. So and containers in public, private, how they will talk to each other. So all these rules will be defined, and we need some kind of networking rules. So how CNA works in EKS? So when we create a EKS cluster, container needs to get their own IP address, communicate with other containers, access the internet, and be accessible from the outside the cluster. So default CNI in EKS is Amazon VPC CNI. So Amazon provides this VPC CNI. So what it does, it provides secondary IP to your pod. So that means like you have, let's say, EC2 running, and EC2 will get IP address from primary IP address from the VPC, right? And then there are some pods running inside the EC2 instance, 1, 2, 3. They will also get IP address, which will be again from the VPC. That's a secondary IP address. So the advantage is it's a simple pod gets regular AWS IP address. It's a fast because direct networking without extra layers. Secure, can use standard AWS networking security. Compatible, works with existing AWS networking tools. Right? So it is again getting a separate IP address. That is a secondary IP address. So let's say your uh, EC2 instance is getting some primary IP address. Get primary IP address. EC2 instance at the node level, it gets primary address from subnet A 10.0.1.100, right? And it can support 10 ENIs, 30 IPs total, let's say. So at pod level, web application is 10.0.1.101. Here it's 100. Okay. Here this is 100. And here it's a 101. Next one is a 102. So these are secondary IP addresses these pods are getting. So EC2 is getting one primary IP address from VPC. Now pods are also having, which are inside the EC2, they are also having secondary address from the same subnet as EC2. Okay. So that way the communication becoming easier. So it's IP to IP. Otherwise, what used to happen, like a request will come to EC2, then from EC2 that port mapping will happen, etc. Then it will go to the pod. Now it's a direct like IP to IP communication, right? So that is the advantage, and that is the advantage of CNI, container network interface. So CNI assigns IP. The process is EC2 instance preparation. First, EC2 instance gets some IP. That is a primary IP for the node itself. Then secondary IP is pre-allocated by CNI. These are the pre-allocated 101, 102, 103, ready for pod 1, pod 2, pod 3, and more pre will be allocated. When pod is created, it will say I need to create web pod. What it is the same, right? Then CNI plugin say I will assign this to this day 101 to this pod, and then create virtual network interface in pods namespace and routes traffic from 101 to the pod. Okay. So that's the advantage. And in a pod, if there are two containers, like let's say in pod 101, there are two containers, one in engineers and app, then you need to have this port, localhost 80 and localhost 2000. Let's say for this web thing. But for database, you don't have, you have only one container inside the one pod. Then it will be direct. And then we also need to see how the communication happens pod to pod. If it is the same network, it doesn't go out to the internet. So it's a internal networking. No internet involved, stays within the city, within the pod to pod, in the same EC2. pod to pod, define nodes from this EC2 to another EC2, define node, right? Define one EC1 to EC2. Pod 1 is there here, pod 2 in EC2. So it will be going through VPC router. It will going through VPC router, right? So AWS handles routing automatically. And external traffic to pod. The pod traffic is on VPC IP, and it will managed by AWS. So AWS ALB, it will go via ALB. Okay. So this is the like advantage of CNI container network interface. So it's giving the secondary IPs to your pod. So what are the networking requirements for EKS? Networking requirement for EKS. What are the network requirements for EKS? So EKS is like a building, like EKS is like a building in a neighborhood, and so VPC is their neighborhood boundary, and EKS you may be running in the private subnet in the VPC. So you need to have VPC, your private VPC, a private subnet in the VPC, and VPC has this minimum address. Let's say it's a 10.0.0/16. So it has got 65,000 addresses to work with. Now, just like a neighborhood boundary, EKS cluster needs its own private and network space. So we create a private subnet, and in the private subnet, we can have defined availability zones. Right? Subnet A in US is 1A, and then US is 1B. And then you have like a front end and back end, private streets, like a private subnet. And in the front end, you have like this is the public streets. So that's the public subnet. And in the private subnet, you can keep your VPC, maybe keep your what is that, your AKS. And in the public subnet, you keep jump server, so that through jump server, you can access your EKS cluster. And then you can have security groups and network access control on these things, standard things. And this kind of things we already discussed. And pod IPS are meant via CNI control, CNI control network interface. So VPC with enough IP address, public subnet in two availability zones. Private subnets also you want to have two availability zones. Internet gateway will be addressed to VPC. NAT gateway will be each public NAT gateway in each public subnet. For private subnet internet access in Reddit. Then DNS resolution will be enabled in VPC. And in case create default security group, and you can modify later if needed. How do you implement network policies in EKS? So create network policy in EKS, you need CNI that supports network policy, for example, Calico or similar. Create Kubernetes network policy resource that restrict or allow pod-to-pod communication. So that kind of network policy, you can need to install a CNI that supports network policy like Calico. AWS VPC CNI does not support Kubernetes network policy natively. So natively it does not support. What is the difference between cluster IP, node port, and load balancer service? So this part we already discussed in Kubernetes playlist. You can check the Kubernetes playlist. So cluster IP is a default type. It exposes service internally within the cluster. So internal microservice communication. Internally, if it is communicating within the cluster, so you go for cluster IP. Node port, it exposes service on a static port on each node. Like for example, 3001 or something. Quick access for testing or dev. And load balancer provision and external AWS ALB so that route traffic to pods via node port. So that's a load balancer exposing apps publicly on the internet. If you want to expose your app publicly on the internet, go for load balancer. There are the three different services: cluster IP, node port, and load balancer. Okay, so now let's go to the quiz section. So what is the role of CNI plugin in a case? What is the role of CNI plugin in a case? You can pause the video and try to answer. Role of CNI plugin is to allocate IP and handle pod networking. Role of CNI is allocate IPs and handle pod networking. C. Which CNI plugin is default for Amazon AKS? Amazon VPC CNI is the default one. In the Amazon VPC CNI, how do pods get IP address? It gets IP address assigned directly from VPC subnet. The answer is C. What is the limitation of Amazon VPC CNI planning? Limitation is limited number of it has only limited number of ports per EC2 node. And why do containers within a single node pod share the same IP address? Because each because they share the same network namespace, and each pod will be assigned to one namespace or ENI, or like it will have one IP address. Each pod will be having only one IP address, a secondary IP address. And if there are two containers running inside a pod, so it has to share the IP address. Which CNI plugin would you use if you want to enforce Kubernetes policy? Kubernetes policy, if you want to use, you can go for Calico. So what happens if a pod is created on a worker node using VPC CNI plugin? What happens when a pod is created on a worker node using the VPC CNI plugin? A secondary IP from node's ANI is assigned to the pod. Secondary IP is assigned to the pod. In VPC-based EKS cluster, what allows internet access for private subnets? You can pause and try to answer. Answer is NAT gateway. What is the function of Amazon K8s CNI demonstrate? What is the function of this demonstrate? Demonstrate function is manage ANIs and secondary IPs on nodes. What is the main advantage of using VPC native IPs for pods in EKS? Pods can directly use AWS security group and networking tools. So that's the advantage of using VPC native IPs for VPC native IPs for pods in EKS, because AWS security group and networking tools can be used by pod. So that's it for today. I hope you like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And also follow my LinkedIn page, Devops Interview. I post quiz contests daily, and you can participate in that. And you can also follow my WhatsApp channel, Devops Channel. I post regular updates. And thank you for watching this video. See you again in the next video.